Hello and welcome to Fly With Your Shadow, the podcast all about music, mental health and illness, and the mess that the COVID pandemic has made of it all. I'm Jeff Robson, and this show comes to you from my home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Over many years, Winnipeg has been a hugely successful breeding ground for great music that's gone on to great fame and acclaim nationally and internationally. Neil Young famously started his first band here. Winnipeg was home to the Guess Who and BTO, as well as influential jazz guitarist Lenny Breau. Bands like Harlequin and the Watchmen started here. More recently, bands like the Waylon Jennys and the Weaker Thans went on to great success on the international stage. But for every one of those bands that's well known elsewhere, there are dozens of hard-working musicians born or just living here that work hard to achieve local or regional success. Our fertile music scene entices musicians from elsewhere to come make a home here to take part in and learn from our incredible musical talent. Today's guest embodies a lot of that sentiment. He's a hard-working, talented performer who found a home in Winnipeg as part of that scene, even though he's originally from elsewhere.
I'm Sean Burns from Oshawa, Ontario, hanging my hat in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Honky Tonk enthusiast, host of Earth's greatest country music radio program.
As you'll hear in our conversation, Sean came into music naturally. He's the son of a professional, hard-working musician. Between 2009 and 2014, Sean released 4 albums, each one more distinct and impressive than the last, and he made a name for himself on the road. Sometime after the release of the 4th one, he fell in love and found his way to Winnipeg, where he quickly inserted himself into one of Winnipeg's main hubs and training grounds for roots-based live music, the legendary Times Changed High and Lonesome Club. Ask just about any Canadian musician and they'll tell you about the legendary Times Changed. The club is owned and run by president and janitor John Scholes, who is as dedicated a music lover as you'll ever meet. Musicians and music fans find themselves drawn to the club, finding themselves there even when they don't know who's playing, because they're assured that the music will be top-notch and they'll be welcomed with drinks and laughter and good times. Just about any night of the week, you can see world-class talent on that stage, and it'll probably cost you $10, if that. Winnipeg is home to a number of incredible musicians who often find themselves touring alongside big-name musicians from elsewhere who recognize the talent and spirit of our players. One of those musicians, and one of the most talented guitarists in our country, is Grant Siemens. His main job is touring the world alongside Corb Lund as one of his Hurtin Albertans. But when Corb isn't playing somewhere, you're most likely to find Grant picking world-class licks alongside a diverse list of singers and bands. Sean Burns and Grant Siemens became fast friends, and together they put together Sean's talented band Lost Country, and recorded a real turning point album for Sean, Music for Taverns, Bars, and Honky Tonks. Lost Country is backed up by Joanna Miller, one of the most amazing, multi-talented, good-hearted drummers you'll ever meet, and a variety of other players. Whenever possible, Burns will take the band on the road, but he also frequently plays solo or as a duo, often alongside his longtime friend and pedal steel guitarist extraordinaire, Lethbridge, Alberta's Skinny Dick. Leading up to last year, Sean had been working on plans to travel down to Texas to make an album with one of his musical heroes, legendary pedal steel player and producer Tommy Detamore. He's produced and worked with a who's who of American country and roots music. It was a big deal for Sean. Obviously, the COVID pandemic had other plans for him. When he's not making or playing music of his own, Sean is a longtime host of a radio show called Boots and Saddle, which is Earth's greatest country music program, and number 1 in the highly coveted Tuesday 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. time slot. That show features beautiful country music by beautiful country music singers. That show originates on local campus and community station CKUW. Recently, Sean also joined the team behind print-only country music magazine The Honky Tonk Times, where he writes the Northern Report, which exposes Canadian talent to a largely American audience. That column recently evolved into a podcast called the Northern Report Podcast, where Sean interviews up-and-comers and Canadian music icons. You can find links to all of it at his website, seanburns.ca, or at flywithyourshadow.com. Here's my recent conversation with Sean Burns.
I drank all the red label deer until I was feeling blue, and I drowned away my memories at that Honky Tonks saloon.
I certainly became aware of you and got to know you when you came to Winnipeg and made that record, Music for Taverns and Honky Tonks and Bars, but you had already had a career up to that point. You didn't just arrive brand new up to that point. Can you give me the brief sort of synopsis of the guy before that? Because I feel like, certainly from the record, you're a different guy now. Is that true? And what was that guy like?
Well, I started making a living playing music, like in cover bands and stuff, early 2001. So I was, just 17 years old. I still wasn't 18 yet. And I kind of did that for a whole bunch of years, like from my late teens all the way to my late 20s. I was like, jobbing around in cover bands. I did a bunch of gigs like on cruise ships with bands. And,
Really?
And, oh man, like I'll say for, I did 5 years or so where I would go out like every winter and do a solo gig out there. And I played 6 nights a week, every single week for like 4, 5, 6 months at a time. I got so much better at singing and playing and reading a room. And I was young, like I was playing older people's music, and like it taught me a lot. So it wasn't just like the cheesy, Love Boat sort of situation. Like I got a lot of hours on stage, and a lot of that is because of that gig. But I would also tour really, really aggressively in the spring, in the summer, in the fall kind of thing every year. I was just grinding it out, man. I was just like trying to find my way, I think. Like my father was a working musician, so there was always an emphasis on like working and getting paid. And, this is what you do. So I would play fucking anywhere. Like I would do any gig. I'd play anywhere. I would just keep going back to the same places. Nothing really made sense. I didn't really have any sort of knowledge about like a long-term goal or presentation or any kind of businessy thing. It was just like gigging. I was just the guy that would always fucking gig anywhere all the time. And that really helped me in the end, like build a pretty good fan base in certain pockets. And I landed in Winnipeg in 2013. I had just put a record out like in the spring of that year that I still think is pretty good. And I was, I just got together with my now wife. Like I was still just immature and trying to figure out what I was going to do. It was just trying to get to the next gig and make a few bucks. But I stopped drinking in early 2017. I met Grant Siemens, and everything sort of changed. I kind of got it together a bit and found a confidence inside me that I didn't know was there, and largely a result of, strong support system with my wife, but also playing with Grant, who, is, as you know, is so good. So that sort of began the process of like, getting an idea together about the importance of being consistent and playing good shows and making better records. And then we made that record, and it sort of, kind of went from there.
Okay, a few things I want to go back to in that answer. Number one, so your dad's a musician. Was he a full-time musician or just a hobbyist? Like, was that his vocation?
My old man was a full-timer, 6 nights a week, every week on the road from like 1977 to 84. And then he took a little pause because he was like, he's the kind of person that was 100% all in with everything he was doing, and he didn't think that he could only be halfway in. So instead of just playing locally on the weekends, he decided he would quit altogether, and that literally like almost killed the guy. So he got back to it maybe 8 years later, and he was full time from 92 until he passed away, which was 2017.
And was he just was he at kind of he wasn't a high level player? That was he just playing taverns and honky tonks and bars himself?
In the day he was playing, in the 70s through the Toronto scene a lot, and then on the road a lot with the kind of regional stars that I try to play on Boots and Saddle. He played with a guy named Joe Firth, and Joe Firth was like, had records and had songs on the radio. He would be on the Tommy Hunter show. So he had some measure of success, and they made good money playing in bars and hotels and stuff. And then in his later days, like when he kind of made the scene again, when he was sober in the 90s, and he was mostly doing like tribute shows, casinos and theaters. And, he did every single impersonator around. Lots of Elvis, lots of Johnny Cash, but he did like Tom Jones and Tina Turner and, like all of the, Jerry Lee Lewis, all the, it's a big thing, that whole circuit. So, and the bands get paid pretty well typically. So he made a good living doing that. They were all over Canada and the States and in Europe and stuff too.
And so as a kid, did you have like a romantic notion of what that was? Was it just you knew that's what you wanted to do because you'd seen your dad doing it and having fun doing it, or what?
No, I thought he was a loser for being a musician, and I thought it was stupid. And then I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be like my dad, even though I was like done wishing that I was going to be in the NHL. Like I still, I still didn't want to play music until I got to high school. I started in 97, and I met a couple guys that were playing music. They're like, one guy played guitar and one guy played drums. And I heard them play, and I instantly knew, like, I could be this shitty next week, and we could be in a shitty band together, and I'll play bass. Cause I did have a moment of romance with music when I was much younger, like, like 8 to 12 years old. And I was like really into Stevie Ray Vaughan, really into blues music and the radio, like hits of the early 90s. And so then I put that away for a while because I thought my dad was a loser. And I go to high school and I meet some losers and I thought we could be in a band together. So I told my dad, like, I want to play music. And he was jacked. Like he was excited about that. And he's like, he was a fairly serious hockey player when he was young, and his parents were like the stereotypical crazy hockey parents that kind of ruined it for their kids, And so he kind of told himself he was never going to do that to me. And luckily I was never, that good of a hockey player. So there was no pressure, and he was really cool. He would just stand by himself and watch the game. But when I started playing music, that was a completely different story. But yeah, so I told him I wanted to play, and he was like, instead of going and spending money buying a bass guitar for you, like, I'll just ask one of my friends to lend us one for a while. And if you take to it, then we'll sort you out. And so that's what happened. I had a really nice bass lent to me. And, I was practicing every day and really enjoying it too. And so a few months later, he bought me my first electric bass, and it was like off to the races there.
So when did you start making your own records, and sort of what was the direction? And because those early records don't sound like what you're doing now. I know you're going to think I'm insulting you, but those early records sound like you were a singer-songwriter at the time.
I made a record in high school. This is something I never talk about, man. I made a record in high school that I had some teachers that were really encouraging and supportive of it. But looking back, like it wasn't very good. But I was 18 years old and made this little record, and then kind of just kept gigging and being in bands, and I just wanted to be I wanted to go places that I'd never been before, and most of them I knew from like junior hockey teams. Like I wanted to go to Brandon, Manitoba, and I wanted to go to Moose Jaw, and like I wanted to play in those towns, so I did that. And then I did the other gigs. And then once I started playing solo, I realized like I need to sell something to people, like, so I made the first record, which was like pretty acoustic based and a lot of cover tunes and just kind of all over the map, just as something to sell. And then the second record I made, like thinking that I was going to like really turn some heads and be respected as a songwriter, and like and it was a rude awakening that I'm glad for now.
Were you into country music at the time? Because I mean, there's obviously some country music in your early records, but the honky tonk guy that I know now doesn't really seem as evident in those records.
I loved country music, like. And I've said this on the radio before, is like, I really thought that I was an informed country music fan, but I was really just a big fan of Buck Owens and Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash and Hank Williams. Like, I was a real big fan of that. So, and I could, play and sing a bunch of those tunes. But I was kind of always afraid to do that. Like I didn't realize, like growing up in Southern Ontario, I didn't realize the support and the enthusiasm for the music, for that music that people do have out west. And I started to find that in those first couple of years touring. And then more and more of the material, especially the cover tunes, would be traditional country music songs. And then I wrote a bunch more in that sort of vein. And then once I I don't want to keep going back to it, but once I stopped drinking, it was like a lot of things became clear, and I had begun hosting Boots and Saddle and really starting to dig into country music and the history. And it was kind of the case of sing, like play what you know, like just play to your strengths, I guess, and I felt that was kind of where it was going. And I was becoming more and more enamored with the history and with the music and the sounds and the subtleties to the sounds, Yeah. And I met Grant, and I hadn't met anyone up to that point that played guitar with that authority. My father did, but I hadn't met anyone else that played like that and played those old licks like so perfectly, and had spent the same amount of time as I did when I was young listening to that music. So we really kind of clicked, and it was like, it just really snowballed quickly, and we got along really well right away, and really met some common ground with the music that we grew up with and loved.
You've brought it up a couple of times, so hopefully I can go there. So did you have a bit of a drinking problem? Like how bad were things for you, and why did you stop when you did?
I gave it like a really consistent effort for like 15 years.
You were going pro?
Yeah, I became a professional in my late 20s. It was like part of the culture of the solo guy in the pub on the cruise ship, right? Is like beers, or like, I would hustle. I learned how to hustle drinks playing in piano bars with piano entertainers. And so that just kind of became part of the shtick. And then it just started kind of spiraling. Like when I would go do those wintertime gigs out there, I would be drinking a lot every day, like in the afternoon and then all night and then after the gig. And it got really, really out of hand, like late 2012, early 2013. And then it was kind of up and down. It was often like a binge type situation where it would be like, especially on the road, like it'd be a few days that were really, really hard. And I wouldn't get too out of hand at home. I was always smart enough to never get like loose or drunk at the Times Changed or anywhere where I was, wanted to play. So I would save that for the road, and as a result, like I still feel a little bit of guilt about some shows that I probably thought were really good, but weren't, And then I was on the road with another band early 2017. Like it was wintertime. There was a band that was going out. They needed a bass player. It was easy for me. I didn't have to book anything. I didn't have to make any plans. I was just going to make money to play. But it wasn't really for me. It didn't go well. I didn't really get along with a couple of the guys, and it was just really out of hand. And I was, having these negotiations with myself, like, you're not going to drink until after the show. And then I would break the rule, or you're only going to drink beer. Because at that point, like a real professional, I had sort of switched to drinking wine, like out of large coffee mugs, and stuff like that. So I just was like, I was anxious and I was shaky and I was sick and I don't know what was wrong with me, but I knew that it was like I had made a conscious decision the second last night, like I'm not drinking tomorrow, and then I'm not drinking for a while. And then I didn't want to say I'm never drinking again, but after a couple months, I kind of resigned myself to like, that has to be it. I'm done, It was just getting out of hand. Like, I wasn't like totally fucking up my life or my relationship, but that wasn't far away, like I could smell that. And I'm very familiar with alcoholism. It's, it's been around, and I've been around bad alcoholics since I was 17 on the road. So, all the signs were there. And like I said, I see bands now all the time, and, they're really getting into it late in the night and they think that they're fucking awesome, but it's like, I know what you're going through. Like you think you're great because you're drunk and everyone else is too. But if you weren't drunk, you'd be so much better, And once I started to play with Joanna Miller and Grant Siemens, it was like, I don't want to be the drunk guy on stage and have them suffer through that. Like they're not going to put up with that, So I realized at some point, like, I'm not missing, like, nothing's come up where I was like, that would have been better or enhanced by drinking. It was like, that would always be the problem, you know? And yeah, just understanding that I just am not capable to be responsible. Like, I just don't have a civilized relationship with that kind of thing. And that's okay. But it takes work every single day, you know, like it's a daily thing still. Sometimes it's harder than other times. And like, you know, I'm luckily, you know, well supported and strong enough to understand, like, you know, that's not worth it. Like, you know, nothing's like, yeah, everything started to get better. Like, it sounds like cliche, but it's true. Like, everything started to get better for me. So like, why mess with that?
But it is such a part of the culture. And I mean, you're spending a lot of time at Times Changed, where drinking is kind of the team sport down there. So how hard is that to still be a part of that community, but know that you can't really do what they're doing?
Times Changed is very supportive, to a fault. It's like, you know, I haven't drank in over 4 years, but if I went down and ordered a beer, someone might look at me and say like, okay, like, you know, they're not going to judge you. So it's a safe place.
Yeah. But
but they'll also be very, very supportive. And they've been so supportive because I'm not the only one that's a regular down there that doesn't drink. You know, like Jay Nowicki, I think the reason they started having the non-alcoholic beers was in part because of Jay.
Yeah.
So they're always well stocked and they're really respectful of the situation. It's not hard. It's hard at like the end of the night or when people are really drunk and in your face. Like then that's tough still for me, you know, to not get soured. But as far as just like going there and not drinking, it's not, that part of it isn't hard. I think I romanticize like the real ugly parts of it. Like when you're sad and alone and drinking or something, you know, and listening to music and you really think you're understanding things. It's like, you know, I think that's harder, but no, they've been very good. There's some gigs that are hard where I was, you know, for years it was like I would be rolling into town and I would be the guy that started the party all the time. And then all of a sudden I'm not, but I still encourage it. And anyone that's in the band will tell you, sometimes I'll be like, you know, I need you to have one for me right now. Like, just, you know, please. Go have a shot for me. Can I just watch? And so that happens every now and then, but, you know, the truthfully, like the genesis of the Lost Country band, not only just the material, it was like a way to provide a service of like, it's always about, here we are. I want everyone to be drinking and dancing and having fun and forgetting about, you know, every shitty, miserable detail of everyday life that everyone goes through. And like, and that's it. And that's part of like, let's play to our strengths. And it's like, even if I'm not feeling good, something that always makes me feel better is being the guy that's starting a good time. And like, you know, cause I'm lucky. I don't go to a job Monday to Friday that doesn't inspire me or I'm not passionate about. Yeah. And so many of the people that come and see us that is their situation and they deserve to have a good time. And I feel like we can give that to them. And that's kind of how the band started. So no, like the long answer is no, it's not hard at Times Changed, but you know, it's something that I'm aware of, you know.
Tell me about like kind of falling in with that community in Winnipeg, especially at the Times Change, which has a very strong kind of built-in community. Like it's John Scholes, the proprietor and janitor, sometimes calls it a clubhouse. Like it's a bunch of friends in a club hanging out, and they just happen to have them be amazing musicians. How does an outsider from Oshawa become a part of that community?
That wasn't easy, actually. And I kind of try to remember how I felt before. Like, I don't know if anyone else has told you this, but like, I mean, for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable going there at all. And I tried to get a gig there for like years, like 5 years. And it was like always a no, or a no response. And then I moved to town. My wife's worked at the club on and off for years as well. And it was like, I was very careful about, you know, not trying to, you know, be the new guy in town whose girlfriend worked there. Can you give me a gig? Like I left it alone for a while. John offered me a gig there at some point, like, you know, hey, you should come down and play on a Thursday night. So we did, and it went pretty well. And he's like, okay, you should come down and play on a Thursday night. And we did. And I would go to the club, like, you know, a couple times a month. I would go sometimes on Sunday, but I was too afraid to jam. And so he gave us some Thursdays, and then he let us open up for someone on a Friday. And basically, he really made us earn it, you know. And I think that was the way that it was there for a while. And that's what, you know, inspires the bands to work harder and get better. And then they get the show there, and then he gives them this place to work on that show, you know. Like, I don't know, that guy is a pretty special person. And but anyways, you know, we worked our way in, and then just started playing there all the time. And then I just started going there, and then, you know, and then I started working there. It was just very sort of natural, you know. It was like, that's where I would go when I would get home from the road. Like, if we got home before last call or something on a Sunday night, like, I'd go there, and it was like, everyone's happy to see you, welcome back, like, how was your trip? And then, you know, like, see you later. It just feels really comfortable. It began to feel really comfortable. And, you know, turns out that, like, all the people that you thought were way too cool to be your friends are actually just regular people who are, you know, who are your friends. Like, you know, everyone cares about each other there. It's a unique place for a music venue, especially one where the party aspect of it is so present, you know.
You're always, especially on stage, you just seem like this ultra confident guy. Like, you just own the stage, and it's your place to be. Have you always been that guy? Was it hard to develop that confidence?
I was always comfortable. Like, from the first time I was, whatever, 14 or 15, like, I was never super nervous. You know, I felt comfortable on stage. I think I always wanted to be the center of attention, truthfully, you know, and you're dealing with a kid acting out in school, you know, or trying to get laughs or trying to get attention, and, you know, I've always been a really sort of loud guy. It's like, our house was loud. You had to be loud to be heard. It was like, I don't know. I liked that aspect of it. But I mean, the confidence came in time, like, after doing so many shows, and then again, like, hooking up with Grant and Joanna especially. And once that started rolling, and then we made a record and we did some shows. And then after that, like, that really made me feel much more confident. You know, I think I was always comfortable, but the real confidence came from that, and watching other real seasoned performers and how they would act on stage, you know, kind of taking cues from veterans.
These days, I kind of see you, and I think you see yourself as more of a performer than a songwriter or anything like that. Like, it's more about doing the best show with the right songs, and that often isn't your songs. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. I mean, on a typical show, I mean, I don't know, 40% of the songs maybe would be ones that I wrote. Maybe less sometimes, you know, like, especially if we're doing like a theme or something. And yeah, I mean, I wish I wrote more songs. And I think a lot of the songs that I have written are maybe not suited for the band, you know, maybe they're, you know, and I do have a whole batch that we haven't played together yet that I've written. So I don't know, but yeah, I think the emphasis has always been on being a performer. And I also do a lot of songs that, like, friends have written, you know? So a little, like, not as conventional of a cover song, but people that don't go on tour or perform live that often, and who have really good songs. Like, Neville hasn't left Winnipeg in like 9 years, but, you know, I've played his songs all over the country.
Andrew Neville, a bit of a local legend, is his great songwriter, great performer. And, yeah, he's just, you can only ever see him at the times changed.
Pretty much now. It's really been like 9 years since he was on the road. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, like, being a performer has been the sort of more of the focus. I mean, I would like to get to a point where, you know, maybe 75% of the night are songs that I wrote. And I don't think that that's too far off. You know, if we were still going at it right now hard, like, I got a whole bunch of tunes that I haven't introduced yet. So it'll grow. But also, like, you know, I've said this, I think, to you before, or at least on the radio, that I think part of the job that we've sort of assumed the role of, like, as this honky tonk band, is like, well, we got to have a trucking record, and we got to have, like, a drinking record, and we got to have a tribute record. You got to check all these boxes. At least I want to do that. And an instrumental record. And you know, part of that is also not being, like, overly nostalgic about the past or anything, but like preserving the sounds and presenting the old material maybe in a bit of a different way, but still, you know, preserving that material for today and sort of introducing that stuff and the niche, truck and country fringe stuff that we do so much of. Like, I don't know. I just think that those songs are great and I want to sing them for people, like, I don't know. I get really, I truly feel, like sincerely lucky to sing like a Porter Wagner song, and it's not something every other band does. And so if I can do that, like, I think you're giving people a sort of a watered down, cocaine and rhinestones slice of country music history,
You've always seemed like a hard touring guy or certainly a regular touring guy, but pre-pandemic, how much of your time are you spending on the road?
Like no less than 4 months of a year. Like if you're talking about always scattered, like I was thinking about this the other day, like after we put out that Taverns record in 2018, March of 2018, I was like gone for, until the end of 2019. So that would always mean like at least 3 weeks in the spring, like in March, usually 2 or 3 weeks with a band. And then always gone April, May for 4 weeks on a solo tour. I do a little thing sometimes in June, 5 or 10 days, always 3-4 weeks in July. Always a little run in August, always one in the fall. So it really adds up, 4 to 5 months of the year, like in total, away from town. Yeah.
So you're doing all this touring and you're playing again, bars and taverns and honky tonks. Like, are you comfortable at that level, or are you trying to build up this show to get to another level?
I don't know what the next step would be. Would be maybe like, what? Yeah, like yes and no. Like I love playing those places. Like I would love to play a 90 or 120 seat times changed venue like 5 nights a week. Like I would be happy with that. It is nice to play a nice room sometimes, like on the road we'll play like, something like a smaller version of like the West End or like I really actually like the small rural community halls where they can still fit a couple hundred people in there in a small community. And it's an old school type of show. Like I like doing those. I don't love the house concerts, but sometimes they're really good. I do love playing music in a bar, in a dive bar. I don't like playing music outside. I don't like watching music outside. Of course, the last year or so has changed that a little bit. But if I had to, I feel like the music that we play should be played in a bar at night, and people should be kind of drunk and dancing and having a really good time. And that's kind of what I like. I think the next step realistically would just be all of them would have more people in them. That would be the next step for me. Canada's tough, man. I think truly it would be playing in similar, like comparable venues in the United States would feel like a real step up, I think, for me.
Your plan for last year was very different than it turned out, like for most people. I know you had a plan to go and kind of record your dream album in the US. Can you talk a bit about that and sort of how the dream died when the pandemic came on? Or did it die? Is it just on hold?
I'm going to do that at some point, like hopefully next fall. So I spent like my entire adult life pre-planning, even when I was kind of, misguided, I was still planning my life like a year ahead of time, right? Like for where I'm going to go, how I'm going to play there, who's going to come with me, all that shit. So we got married in August of 2019, and like neither of us have ever held a civilian job or anything, but this is like very sort of like got married, bought our house, decided we were going to start a family. Like it was all kind of, we were being very conscious in what we were doing. So it was like, we were going to try to like start to have a family, and I was going to go make this record in April 2020, and like, then we would have a child in the summer, and I would kind of be here, we would both be here, and then I would go on the road like right now, or something. So obviously like none of that stuff turned out. Like it was, it was really tough. My wife had a miscarriage early in the year, and then that was like horrible. And then we went to Europe for a few weeks in February, and then we came home and it was like COVID, and I was like still planning on going to Texas. Like, so everything changed. Right. And then I'm planning to go to Texas. And then like the day after I start making these firm plans for my travel, it was like, you can't go. So everything was like, it was really tough. There was a few weeks where I didn't really leave the basement here. It was like pretty tough, you know, because everything had been planned, and like these big, huge steps and like significant steps in our lives had been planned together. For the first time, I was like not just thinking about myself, you know, I was including someone else. And so that was really hard. Like, I think I got out of that by like, again, you're also used to having something to do or something to look forward to. And then there's none of that. And when you're so busy all the time, it's like such a huge adjustment. So then I thought I would just like maybe record some songs at home. And then that turned into that record. It Takes Luck to Get the Best of Me. And you know what, man, it was really hard. I worked through all that stuff, like really consciously, and I was writing every day, and I was like, you know, like documenting how I was feeling. And then I was working on these songs, and I was like trying to learn these songs, and it was like, it was therapeutic, and it turned out really, really good too. So it was good in the end, but you know.
Yeah, it's a great record. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm really proud of that. Like I said, I was just going to do a couple songs, like just for something to do. And then I was like, well, I could just do the whole record. Like I could do a whole record here. And it was nice to include all the people that I included, you know, like everyone that's on there had spent time with me on the road or in the studio before. Even like the guy that did the cover art, like he had done a lot of touring with me. So it was really cool. Like, you know, it felt like, I don't know if I was conscious of it at the time, but it was like, you're like connecting with these people and reconnecting with them and having a conversation through the music with them. And, you know, we weren't able to do that. And it felt like, it felt like maybe we would soon, but is, you know, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So in the end, like it was horrible and it was hard, but like it turned out positive, and there's something to show for it. And I'm still going to go to Texas and make that record with those guys when I can, when it feels like it's safe and smart to do it.
But you never had that thing where you thought, well, maybe I need to do something else now, either financially or, you know, just to have a normal life at some point where I'm not always on the road and not always doing that thing. Did you go through those steps of reevaluating and think, what else can I do with my life?
That's hard because I don't know what else I could do, you know, like I don't really you know, like I graduated high school, but I've never did anything after that. And I don't have any job experience. Like I've talked to Grant about this, and it's like, what are we going to do? Like, you know, it's not like I'm against getting some kind of a gig, but like, what would it be? And, so no, it's been, I mean, that might be a serious thing to think about soon, you know, but I don't know what the hell I would do.
Yeah. So you've just stayed resolved and trying to figure out, you know, how to get by until you can go back to doing what you do best.
Yeah. And I'm not unfamiliar or uncomfortable with a little bit of suffering or struggle, you know, like it's true. Like, you know, like, so, and I'm pretty good at trying to be objective and day at a time and positive, you know, and the not drinking thing like has really been helpful because I'm so used to just being with the day at a time mentality. Right. And it's like, especially now where we're at with the pandemic, it's like, it's irresponsible to make predictions about what it's going to be like in 3 weeks. So let's just like do our best every day, you know? So I think that's kind of been it. Like, I think that I'm confident in what I've been doing in the last year on the radio and on the podcast and with the records that we've done. Like, I think that someday and this might sound really naive, but I think someday I'll find a way to make money doing one of those things on the side, you know? And I think if I just continue to make work, like good work, like when I finish a show, like, and I, you know, I often feel good about what I did. It's like all I can do is make sure that there's hundreds of those shows for someone to listen to or find and then go, okay, like, you know, this guy can do this, whatever this is, you know? So I kind of try to stay positive like that. And also like it'll come back, and I'm not above playing anywhere for any amount of people. There's always going to be somewhere where someone wants to hear some asshole play some songs. And I can be that asshole. I'll fucking go anywhere. I'll play anywhere. I'll go by myself. I'll bring 4 people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, cause that's what I do. And I feel I've told other guys this too. And performers, like, we'll be fine. Like, we can play on our own, you know? and people are going to want to hear that. And whether it's, 20 people in like some little town or 20 people in Winnipeg, like, you know what I mean? Like, you find a way. And maybe I'm maybe I'm a fool for believing that, and I'll be in big trouble someday. But I just don't know. I don't think so.
As Corin Raymond says, there will always be a small time. There's always a need for a small gathering of people who enjoy music and stuff. So long as you're comfortable with the small time, and there's always going to be a job for you.
It's true, and I think the bigger that you get, like, then there's a whole new set of problems too. And people with their hands in your pocket, and like, if you're able to exist and make money doing something that you really enjoy doing, like not making much money, but like, living your life. I mean, that's a little bit successful in and of itself. I would say.
You're always seem to be like a generous guy with your time and your talents, whether it's just, doing boots and saddle and dedicating yourself to making the show the best it can be. You did a record and kind of used it to raise money for the station. You did another record and gave all the money to John Scholes and the Times Changed. And I don't know whether you're making any money off the Honky Tonk Times or any of these other things, but another thing is that you're always kind of giving props to other songwriters, like you mentioned before, and stuff like that. Is that where does that come from? That generosity and that need to help other people out instead of just always doing it for yourself?
I think that when I was coming up, like being so young and playing with a lot of older guys, and some of them were real rugged individuals with much different upbringings and stuff. So it was like almost like I always kind of felt like they're trying to keep you down, or like they're not as sort of forgiving or understanding, and they may be like more possessive about their gigs or whatever. I don't know if that's where it comes from, but I feel like maybe a little bit of that, where I don't want it to be like that. And like, if someone asks me for contacts because they want to book a tour, like, I'll give you all of the contacts that I have, like, because people did that for me, like I have friends that were full-time touring guys that gave me all the phone numbers and emails and venues to call, and you can drop my name at, this one or that one. And like, that really helped me out. And if I can do that for anyone like that's, I would love to just return that favor. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's really good music, and I know this, like there's really good music, and it often falls on the shoulders of people like you or me who are willing to do the time to listen and dig around. And I just feel like people should hear that. Like, people should hear good songs, and at least I trust that I have a pretty good taste. So if I think it's good, maybe most of the people that listen to the show will think it's good too.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it obviously speaks to the confidence that you have, because a lot of songwriters would be kind of like, they would feel threatened by boosting somebody else's songs up and saying these are great songs, because a lot of people need to feel like their songs are the best songs, and not shine a light somewhere else, because you might feel like it would take the light away from you.
Yeah, I don't get that. Some people are like way too precious about that kind of thing, like, who the fuck are you to think your songs are so good, that you can't tell me that the guy down the street might not be better than you. Like, I don't have any time for that. Like, I don't know. I feel like also I want to do the best that I can do. I made a commitment to do this show every week. I want it to be really good. I don't want to let the people down at CKUW or the however amount of people that listen every week. And like, part of that is playing new music. It's playing music by bands that are, coming through on tour, even if you don't love them, and playing the music that I love, again, because you're giving the show some of your own identity, like some of your own personality. So I don't know, man. I think, and John has been an inspiration too. Like, his whole thing of like trying to build up these like local regional stars that in his club and make it seem like a bigger deal than it is. It's just it's like romantic for me, like I think, yeah, why not? Like, why can't we do that? And tell each other that we like what each other does. And if we don't, then, and be able to tell them that too,
How much should we worry about clubs like the Times Change? I mean, I know the Times changed after years of never really knowing how long it was going to last. Seems to be in a solid place right now. But how worried are you about the gigs or the places across the country that you love while this shutdown lingers on?
Like totally worried about a lot of them. Like I said before, like not so worried that like there'll always be somewhere to play. But the thing is like there's some really great places that come to mind that would be like devastating to lose, you know? And it seems like a number of them are on the verge or like barely getting by. And so, yeah, like as this continues on up here, it seems likely that some more will have to shut down, and that's terrible. Like it's because they provide the same thing to those communities that the Times Change does for us here. You know, like I look to the Blues Can in Calgary. Like I love that place, and the Ironwood in Calgary too. Both of them serve a different purpose as far as the style of show, but like they're both great venues, and they've both been struggling to get by. You know, some of the other ones I haven't heard too much from, but you hope that they're doing all right. You know, like. Yeah, I don't know, because again, a lot of people are like trying to book tours for the winter, and I'm like, is that really going to happen? Like, is that place even going to be there? So yeah, no, it's a concern for sure. It's totally a concern, you know, in the big picture of these venues, and then what happens to those spaces after they're no longer venues. It's a crazy fucking business to get in.
Is there anything that fans can do, or people who care about these things? Is there some sort of a united way to protect these venues or help them out, or do we just hope for the best?
We hope for the best, and if you know, like if they're doing fundraisers, I know the Blues Can in Calgary was doing one or is about to do one. Like, you know, Ironwood too. You know, but any like with a fund drive, it's like any amount counts and helps, you know. Or if you're gonna buy takeout, you're gonna get food from there, you're gonna buy merch, like anything, because all that adds up. And I mean, you know, John sold a bunch of merch and put that record together, and that's great. You know, when stuff like that comes up, it's like you gotta step up to the plate if you can. At least I think so. And otherwise, I have no idea, man. It is a really scary thought, because this is still really out of hand. Like, I don't even know if we're going to play this summer.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just announced this weekly series at the Times Changed Outside, and John spent all his time and money building this huge outdoor stage and everything. And then, well, here we are. There's no hope for that in the immediate future anyway.
Yeah, it's a kick in the shins like every time, man. We were supposed to, you know, we've been postponed several times, and I don't know what's going to happen. You know, it would be nice to do it. This is the longest that we haven't been at work, you know, and it's hard to get prepared when there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. And you're dealing with musicians who, so many of them are last minute people anyway, right? Like I asked Joanna, it's like she hasn't even listened to the songs, you know? She's like, I'm not listening to them until I know the gig is going to happen. It's like, hey, you know, I know you won't let me down, so okay. And I spent time, I was digging in and like learning new tunes and working on them. And then it's, you know, last couple of weeks, it's been tough to get motivated to, you know, to put in the time. It'll come.
You've taken on all kinds of projects over the pandemic. Well, obviously you were doing Boots and Saddle before, but it certainly seems like you've poured even more into that. Then you started writing for the Honky Tonk Times, and you started this new Northern Report podcast. What else is there? What else are you going to do? Is that enough?
That's got to be enough for now. I my cup is full. The Honky Tonk Times just came out of nowhere. Taylor's the guy who started it. He got a hold of me like in November or December, and then he kind of went dark, and then he came back, and it was like he was ready to roll. So we started, you know, there's a few DJs that are writing columns. None of us are getting paid. Everyone's just putting their time in, and he asked me to do it, and he kind of pitched me the idea. And I thought it was really cool. And I thought it would be like another good way to spread the word about Boots and Saddle and about myself for when the time comes when I do get to go back down there, you know? It's a kind of a good introduction. Oh, you know, you're the guy from the Honky Tonk Times, or you're the guy that writes about the Canadian thing. Yeah, that's me. Now come to my show or whatever, or don't. But, you know, so that's kind of like, and again, like, I thought I knew what was going on. I thought I had my finger on the button or the pulse or whatever. And it's like, no, you know, like you got to dig around. There's other people out there that are really, really good, and you might not know who they are. And so that's been really good about the Honky Tonk Times. And then I've always wanted to do the podcast. The podcast has been something I want to do for a long time. But I originally wanted to do it sort of centered around Winnipeg and Winnipeg artists, and like trying to get to the bottom of like, how come there's so many good musicians here, you know? And I was like encouraged by people like, no, you can't just do it, you know, locally. You got to do more. Like, you know, you play in all these other cities. Why don't you feature them? And so just kind of never came to fruition. And then once I started writing for the Honky Tonk Times, I thought it was like a perfect way, you know, it was easy. It's like, I'll just interview all the people that I've written about. And now we've written 4 columns, and I've like just done way too many interviews. Now I've like, I took a lot on. I had friends that were telling me like, you're crazy. I was downstairs, like putting in 8-hour days, like every day. My wife was like, you know, I need help in the yard. You know, you got to have other things going on. It's dark and, you know, cold down there. So anyway, yeah, no, I don't know if I have time for anything else right now. I'm really trying to make the podcast good and strong, and I'm trying to be consistent with the Boots and Saddle as well. And like trying to remember to sing and play, you know. And that's such a good release too. Like,
that's a good thing. Hopefully, yeah, with all these things going on, hopefully you're finding time to practice or learn new songs or write new songs as well.
I think that like sometimes for me, at least, when there's a bit of that sort of break away from it, or when it's not your primary focus, then when you come back to it, like there's all these ideas, you know? And I usually sort of have an idea, and then oftentimes I'll like put it down and go for a walk, and things will get done in my head on the walk, and I can come home and like finish the song or whatever, you know? It's just a little bit of a step away from it. And then, you know, maybe there's some songs. So it'd be nice to hammer some more out this summer. I think that's kind of the plan. Like I got to get on a bit of a schedule with the playing and stuff, and just try to make time for everything, because, you know, pretty hard on myself. Expect a high quality, you know. If I wasn't doing this stuff, Jeff, like I would go a little crazy. Like I would start. Things get a little like when there was no gigs and I didn't know when they were going to come back. There's darkness. Like there's like, you know, what am I doing? Like, am I useful at all? And it's like, yeah, you know, you are. And find some shit that you are into doing, and no matter how many people are going to hear it or listen to it, like it's going to be there. And if you're standing by it and believing in it and it's giving you something, it's like, that's gotta be, someone else has got to be picking up on that. And so I'm just doing stuff, you know, and I hope that people dig it. And, but you know, maybe it'll take some time, and, yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to keep doing it because I've got to.
Sean Burns may not be famous internationally or even nationally, but he's content being known regionally and especially municipally. I like to think that the kind of talent that Sean and his band members possess, and the kind of passion and generosity that he embodies, can't stay a secret forever. One of these days, the world is bound to take notice, but until then, you can catch Sean Burns somewhere, sometime, in a tavern, bar, or honky tonk near you. Check out his website for more information. Visit seanburns.ca. You can buy any one of Sean's 10 great albums at seanburns.bandcamp.com. Listen to his wonderful radio show, Boots and Saddle, and his Northern Report podcast in all the usual places, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. You can read his column in the Honky Tonk Times by ordering copies from thehonkytonktimes.com. You can find this show, Fly With Your Shadow, on social media, and on all major podcast providers, and by going to flywithyourshadow.com. On the website, I post each show's music credits and links and more information. I welcome and appreciate your feedback and suggestions anytime by emailing flywithyourshadow@gmail.com. As always, I'd really appreciate it if you would tell someone about this show to help spread the word. That personal recommendation is the best kind of advertising, and that effort on your part would be so powerful and greatly appreciated. I'm Jeff Robson, and I thank you for listening, and I hope that you'll join me next time on Fly With Your Shadow.
Hey, this is Sean Burns. I'm about 5'10", and I love country music. I'm under 6 feet tall. I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario, and call Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada home now for about 8 years. I'll say anything you want. I'm a podcaster. I am a broadcaster. I gotta get that into the show. I'm a podcaster. I'm a broadcaster. Get the real like preacher thing happening, which is, not dissimilar to the kind of way that I approach it anyways,